Sometimes love doesn't end with shouting. It ends with silence. With two people who once promised forever, now avoiding each other's eyes in the same room. The papers lay quietly on the kitchen counter, the final chapter of their story. "Leave them there," she said, her voice steady, eyes tired. "I'll sign them in a minute." But he didn't move. He stood there, holding the documents like they weighed more than just paper, like they carried every moment they'd ever lived together. The house around them was silent, but full of ghosts. Laughter that once echoed through the hallways now lived only in memory. The smell of her coffee still lingered in the kitchen, but it didn't feel like home anymore. "Why should I leave my own house?" he finally muttered. "We agreed I'd stay until it's sold," she replied, her tone cold, her back turned. They weren't fighting anymore. That was the strange part. They were too tired for anger. This was something worse, indifference that hurt more than hate. That night, as rain tapped against the windows, he walked into the bedroom, their bedroom. Her things still filled half the dresser. Her favorite perfume sat untouched on the nightstand, like a time capsule. "What are you doing here?" she asked sharply. "I'm going to sleep here." "No, this is my bed. It's mine too." There was an awkward pause, one of those moments when even breathing feels like a confession. "Then you sleep in the hammock," she said coldly. "I'm not sleeping in the hammock." "Yes, you are." He tripped slightly while trying to grab his pillow. She chuckled, softly, involuntarily. He looked up, half smiling despite himself. "You hurt yourself?" she asked, her voice softening. "Yeah, your fault." For a second, just one, the walls between them cracked, the air changed, and it felt like old times, before everything went wrong. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. She turned away, pretending to check her phone. He sighed and settled into the hammock. Two people, one roof, and 1,000 unsaid words between them. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains. He woke first. The faint smell of her shampoo floated through the air. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. They had stopped loving each other long before today. Or maybe they hadn't. Maybe love never really leaves. Maybe it just hides beneath the ashes, waiting for one foolish spark to remind them both that it's still there. And neither of them knew it yet. But before those divorce papers were signed, that spark was coming. Not in a letter, not in an apology, but in something far more dangerous. A single moment of passion that neither of them would see coming. Sometimes, love doesn't die quietly. It waits. For the day you think you've finally buried it. Morning light slipped through the blinds, casting long golden lines across the kitchen floor. The same floor where they'd once danced barefoot after buying this house. Now it was just another battlefield of silence. Jose Daniel rubbed the sleep from his eyes and walked toward the kitchen, still half asleep, still half remembering. Alejandra stood there pouring coffee, her hair tied back, no makeup, yet somehow she looked exactly like the woman he'd fallen in love with years ago. "Do you have anything for breakfast?" he asked quietly, his voice hesitant, like he was speaking to a stranger in his own home. "In this house, there was never a day without something to eat," she said flatly. He smiled faintly. "You're right. We always ran out of patience, never food." She glanced up. The corner of her lips twitched, half an attempt at humor, half an old reflex she didn't expect to feel again. "Is that a hint?" "Maybe," he said, leaning against the counter. "Lend me some eggs and I'll pay you back when I order more." "No problem." Then came the pause. That fragile electric silence that fills the air when two people who know each other too well pretend they don't. "How about you cook the eggs and I cut the fruit?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "You? Helping in the kitchen?" She laughed, genuinely this time. "Please, you didn't even like washing the dishes." "Everyone can change," he said softly. Her laughter faded. He was serious, or maybe she just wasn't used to him sounding that sincere anymore. I don't believe a word you say. You're judging me before giving me a chance, he countered. I'm an expert. And I'm going to beat you. We'll see about that. They began to cook together, awkwardly at first, like actors in a play neither wanted to rehearse, the kitchen filled with small talk and the comforting rhythm of knives against cutting boards, the smell of sizzling eggs and fresh fruit mixed with something else, something warm and dangerous. When he handed her the plate, their fingers brushed. Neither of them moved away right away. It was only a second, but it felt like a heartbeat too long. They sat down at the table, pretending everything was normal. He took a bite, looked at her, and smiled. It's been a long time since I had such delicious food. Now you appreciate what I did for you, she teased. He sighed, his voice softer now. Alejandra, please, forget the past. We're getting divorced because of the past, she replied, her eyes flicking away. Not everything was bad. I didn't say it was. There it was, that small door opening again, memory creeping in, gentle and relentless. When breakfast was done, she stood up, collecting the dishes. If you want to keep the house, fine, he said quietly. But as long as we're here, let's try to get along. She stopped mid-motion, her back still turned to him. You're right, this is better. She turned slightly, just enough for him to catch her smile. The fruit you cut was really good. Thanks for noticing, he said, smiling back. It was small, a shared smile, a moment of peace, the kind of truce that doesn't need words. But sometimes, that's how love begins to whisper again. Not through grand gestures, but over breakfast and broken pride. Some wars end not with surrender, but with someone finally saying, sit down, eat with me. By the third day, the air between them had changed. It wasn't cold anymore, just charged. Every look, every small comment, every accidental touch seemed to say something neither dared to admit. And then came the knock on the door. Jose opened it and froze. A tall, handsome man stood there, dressed in a perfectly pressed suit and wearing the kind of smile that makes men uneasy. Good morning. John, Alejandra's lawyer. Jose blinked. You're her lawyer? That's right, John said confidently, and also a friend. A friend. That word hit harder than it should have. Jose forced a polite smile, hiding the spark of jealousy that burned in his chest. Why didn't you tell me you had a partner? He asked quietly after John stepped outside to grab his briefcase. You told me to move on, she said coolly. I did. He nodded. But his jaw tightened. Move on. 2 words that tasted like acid. Later, while John reviewed the documents in the living room, Alejandra's best friend whispered from the corner, Ale, are you sure about this? About what? About pretending you're okay. Your eyes, they still love him. Don't say that, Alejandra muttered. You can lie to him, but not to yourself, her friend said softly. At that moment, Jose appeared with a fake smile that didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said, since Alejandra has a new boyfriend, maybe I should find myself a girlfriend too. The room went quiet. Alejandra's fork paused midair. Her eyes darted to his, searching for what she wasn't ready to see. Oh, she said with a smirk she didn't feel. That was fast. Life's short, he replied smoothly. No point wasting it on the past. The next morning, Alejandra heard laughter coming from outside. She stepped out onto the porch and saw him. Jose stood near the garden, laughing with a woman she'd never seen before. A tall brunette, stylish, confident, her hand resting a little too easily on his arm. Alejandra's chest tightened. She shouldn't care. She had no right to care. But her heart didn't know that. You have a girlfriend now? She asked that night, trying to sound indifferent. Yes, like you, he said calmly. Or did you expect me to wait and suffer since you left? Her eyes flashed. Our love didn't mean anything to you. Time erases memories, he said coldly, "just like I erased yours." The words cut deeper than he intended. She turned away before he could see the tears. Later that evening, Alejandra confessed to her friend again, voice trembling. "I can't do this. I told him I was seeing someone to make him jealous, but now I feel horrible." "Why? You only wanted to protect yourself." "No, I wanted him to feel what I felt, but now I just feel worse." Her friend sighed. "Because you still care." "That's the problem," Alejandra whispered. "I do." Across the house, Jose sat in his room staring at the ceiling. His so-called girlfriend wasn't really his girlfriend, just a favor, a shield for his wounded pride. But the truth? He'd do anything just to hear Alejandra laugh again the way she used to. The next morning, their lies collided. Jose's fake girlfriend arrived at the same time as Alejandra's fake boyfriend, both unaware of the performance they were walking into. John extended his hand to Jose's girlfriend. She smiled awkwardly. Alejandra stood frozen, trying not to burst into nervous laughter. It was chaos wrapped in politeness, fake smiles, real tension. Every glance between Jose and Alejandra screamed the same question: why are we doing this? After they left, Alejandra slammed the door shut and turned to him. "You lied about having a girlfriend." "So did you," he said quietly. Silence. Then softly, almost like a confession, she said, "I just wanted you to know I'm not alone." "That's not the right thing to do," he said. "What does that matter?" "It matters because it means you still care." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the space between them filled with all the things they couldn't say. "Sometimes," he whispered, "we lie to protect our pride. But all it does is prove our love never really died." She looked away, her voice breaking. "Then maybe we both need to stop pretending." They wanted to make each other jealous, but jealousy only uncovered what both of them were too afraid to admit. They still belonged to one another. The next morning was quiet, too quiet. The house that once echoed with laughter, arguments, and shared life now only held the sound of footsteps on cold tiles. 2 coffee mugs sat untouched on the counter, one black, one with sugar, like ghosts of a routine neither could admit they missed. Alejandra stood by the window, the divorce papers on the table behind her. Her fingers brushed over the top page, but she couldn't bring herself to pick up the pen. "I just want this to be over," she whispered to herself. But even as she said it, her heart betrayed her, because the truth was, she didn't want closure. She wanted peace, the kind that only love, not signatures, could bring. The knock came gently. Jose Daniel stood at the door holding something small, a flower, just like the ones he used to pick for her from the garden when life was simple. He didn't say anything at first. He just placed it on the table between them. "What's this?" she asked softly. "Something I should have done more often," he said. "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted, "but I wanted to remind you that even though we're getting divorced, you were the most important person in my life." Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. "Jose, don't say anything," he said gently. "Just know that it hurts me too. I wasn't perfect. I stopped listening. I let my pride ruin us, and I'm sorry." He looked down at the papers, that small, cruel stack of ink and decisions. "We let our emotions control us," he whispered, "and we lost everything because of it." That's when the front door opened again. John. The lawyer stepped in with his confident smile. "Good morning. I assume you're both ready to sign?" The moment shattered. Jose straightened up, voice steady again. "Yes, let's get this over with." John sat down, flipping through the pages like a man flipping through someone else's life. "Alejandra, sign here and here." She took the pen. Her hand trembled. Across the table, Jose avoided her eyes. "Before we do this," John said casually, "could you make me something to eat? I skipped breakfast." Of course, Alejandra replied automatically. As she walked to the kitchen, Jose felt his chest tighten. The sound of her moving around, the clinking of dishes, it felt too familiar, too alive. He realized that this, her voice, her presence, her warmth, was the home he'd been trying to keep. Not the house, her. John smiled politely when she brought out a plate of food. "Thank you," he said, taking a bite. "You're welcome," she murmured. Then, under her breath, barely audible, she whispered to herself, "Why does this feel so wrong?" When she returned to the table, Jose was gone. The papers sat there, unsigned, his pen still lying across the page. "Where did he go?" John asked. "Outside," she said quietly, stepping toward the door. She found him near the pond, throwing crumbs to the fish, the same spot where they'd once planned to build a gazebo together. "You didn't sign," she said. "Neither did you," he replied without turning around. The air between them was fragile again. She looked down. "I don't know if I can." "Then don't," he said softly, "at least not out of anger." "I'm not angry," she admitted. "Just scared." Of what? Of feeling everything again. He turned to her then, really looked at her, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. "Alejandra," he said quietly, "I'd rather fight for love than sign it away." Her voice broke. "But we already failed once." "Then let's fail better this time," he said, stepping closer. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Only their breathing filled the air, uneven, real, trembling with all the things they'd kept buried for too long. She reached for the papers, folded them, and without another word, she tore them in half. "You can't undo a marriage with ink," she whispered, "but maybe you can rebuild it with honesty." He smiled faintly, a tear slipping down his cheek. "You always were the brave one." They stood there in the fading light, two people who had almost destroyed each other, now standing on the fragile edge of hope. "They came to end a marriage," the narrator whispers, "but sometimes love refuses to be signed away." That night, the storm came. Not just outside, but inside their hearts. The house creaked as thunder rolled across the sky, the same way it used to when they'd curl up together under a single blanket, whispering about dreams they never realized. Only this time, there was no laughter, no promises, just two people trying to find warmth where everything once burned down. Jose sat by the fire, staring at the flickering light. Alejandra walked in quietly, a blanket around her shoulders, her hair loose, the way he used to like it. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the steady crackle of the flames and the unspoken tension between them. "You didn't have to light the fire," she said softly. "I didn't want you to be cold," he replied. Her lips twitched into a smile. "After everything, you still think of me first." "Always," he said without hesitation. She sat across from him, the light dancing on her face, turning her eyes into gold. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, he didn't see the anger or the pride or the history. He just saw her. "You look tired," he said. "Tired of pretending," she whispered. He leaned forward. "Pretending what?" "That I stopped loving you." The words hung in the air, trembling. He froze, his breath caught in his chest. "Say that again," he whispered. "I still love you, Jose," she said, her eyes glassy but sure. "Even when I tried to hate you, I couldn't. I just missed you." He closed his eyes, his voice breaking. "I never stopped either." And suddenly, the space between them didn't feel like distance anymore. It felt like gravity, pulling them together with all the force of everything they'd lost and everything they still were. She moved closer, slow and unsure. Their hands met halfway. It was the same touch as before. Familiar, electric, alive. "Do you remember?" she whispered. The night before our wedding? When you said that if we ever got lost, love would find us again?" "I meant it," he said. "It just took us longer to be found." The fire crackled louder, like it was listening, and in that moment, all the walls they had built over time, all the defenses and pain, melted away. He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "We can't go back," she said softly. "Then let's go forward," he replied, "but together." She laughed through her tears. "You make it sound so easy." "Love's never easy," he said, "but it's harder to live without it." Their eyes met. One last hesitation, and then finally, the distance between them disappeared. The kiss wasn't rushed or desperate. It was slow, deep, full of memory and forgiveness, the kind of kiss that doesn't ask for permission. It simply says, "We're still here." Outside, the thunder rolled again, but inside, something else was happening. The sound of rain turned into music, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they weren't breaking apart. They were coming home. Later that night, Alejandra rested her head against his shoulder. The divorce papers were gone, the silence between them, replaced by the soft rhythm of two hearts that had finally remembered their way back to each other. "What now?" she whispered. "Now," he said. "We start over. From zero? From the truth." The next morning, the sun rose over the same house that had once been a battlefield, but this time it was quiet. Not because of distance, but peace. She poured him coffee. He smiled. No big speeches, no promises, just small gestures, the kind that build everything love ever needs. Sometimes, the narrator says, two people have to lose everything, even each other, to realize they were never meant to walk away. They had come to sign their ending. Instead, they rediscovered their beginning. Because passion didn't destroy them, it saved them. The fire never died. It was only waiting for them to remember.